Hi everyone, my name is Lila and I'm the Mini Witch. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This week's video is all the tips you need to paint eyes.
She's a witch! Banhead!
What? Don't tell your sons that. First, this video is going to be about painting eyes on smaller miniatures. Think 28mm, 32, 54, etc, etc. Although you can do this on larger models, I'm sure that there are better videos about that. The things we're going to go over in this video are paintbrushes, paint consistency, posture, 3 techniques of how to paint eyes, as well as troubleshooting and what to do when you mess up. We're also going to go over some advanced techniques once you've mastered eyes. First, we need to talk about brushes, one of the most important parts about being able to paint eyes. I use a Winsor Newton 1 and 0, 1 and 00. I'll put it right here. I'm not entirely positive of what brushes I use, but these ones. What's really great about both of these is their extremely fine tip. That really fine tip is what's going to allow you to get into those nooks and crannies and make very precise paint strokes and dots. Also, use the paintbrush shape to your advantage. Since the paintbrush literally ends in a perfect point, if you need to flip that miniature over so that you can get those nooks and crannies with that perfect point, then that's what you should do. Of course, you can use whatever paintbrush works for you, but I highly recommend these. And if you would like to purchase these brushes, you can purchase them down below from my Amazon affiliate links and I'll make a little bit of money. Now, I know you want to get into the painting techniques, but it doesn't matter how good your technique is if your paint consistency isn't correct. You need to thin down your paints. That is the #1 thing. Different paint brands have different viscosities, so each one will be a little unique. But you do want the paint to still be properly opaque. You don't want this to be a glazed consistency. You just want it to be thin enough to flow off your brush. The second thing you need to know is that you need to load up your brush enough so that the paint is going to flow off of your brush easily. Now that could be with paint or that could be with water. For example, you can dunk your paintbrush into your paint cup, dab it on the sponge of your wet palette, or here I'm using Red Grass Games Everlasting Wet Palette and it came with this little zigzag water cup pan thing. And I dip my brush into that, wipe it off a little bit, and then load up my brush. Speaking of this wet palette, I have been using the Red Grass Games Everlasting Wet Palette, and I really like it. I definitely like it better than my Stay Wet palette. I just found that it wasn't keeping my paint as wet as I thought that it should be. My one caveat to the Red Grass Games palette is that you do need to drill a hole into the cover or something like that, because if you close it the whole way, the paint tends to separate and pool, so you need to get a little bit of airflow in there, so just drill a single hole in it and you should be fine. I always test my paint on my hand first, because if I can't get that perfect light stroke on my hand, then I'm not going to be able to do it on the Mini. The paint should flow off of your brush with just the softest of touches. However, if it's suddenly blobbing off onto your hand full of water, your brush has too much water in it. So dunk your brush in water and dab it off on a paper towel, or stick it into your wet palette. Then load up your brush with thinned down paint and test on your hand, then begin painting. The last thing you need to consider before you begin painting is your posture. Personally, I prefer resting my elbows on the table. The idea is that you want to stabilize your elbows. Think of it as creating a steady foundation for which to build on top of. I recommend painting with a grip that has a handle because that will allow you to rest your hand on that grip and be able to steady it better to get those really fine and detailed strokes. I'm using this hobby holder by Game Envy that I absolutely love. I have a discount code available. It'll be here as well as a link in my description. Next, I usually hold my breath when I go in to make those paint strokes. This might seem silly, but any extra movement could be the killing blow to your miniature, and I'm not going to risk it. Also, I know this doesn't quite fit into posture, but make sure you have adequate lighting as well. Alright, so now we're on to actually painting eyes. So pick up your miniature and take a look at the eyes. You need to set realistic expectations of what you're going to be able to achieve. I always prefer using miniatures that have really sculpted eyes because it's a lot easier, but it's not impossible to just paint on the eyes if it's just a concave surface, but it is going to be more difficult. The other thing you want to look for is, are the eyes too small? Or maybe this female has hair in front of her face, which I don't know why they do that, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves, and I will not buy a miniature because there's hair in front of her eyes. Anyway, sometimes it's just not worth painting the eyes, and you're just going to give yourself a huge headache because of it. So make sure you're setting your expectations realistically. The 3 techniques I'm going to show you are all totally fine. I have my preferred technique, which is the technique I'm going to show you first, but the other 2 are just as good, and there isn't really a wrong way to paint eyes. First, I always start out with the eyes. That way, if I really seriously mess it up, I can strip and start again and I haven't wasted a bunch of time. So I recommend starting with the eyes or whatever area is going to be the most difficult. Now, my favorite technique for painting eyes, you're first going to paint the entire area an off-white. Now, you're not worried about staying in the lines at this point, you're just trying to get an even coat. Then you're going to carve in the eyes with a dark color. That could be dark brown, dark red, black if you really want a lot of contrast, but I usually prefer using like a darker red. And you're going to slowly carve in these areas until they are the perfect white shape. So you're going to have the white of the eyes, and then you're going to have an eyeliner, and that's what's going to help your eyes pop because of the contrast. At this time, you want to make sure that your eyes are even. So throughout all of these techniques, you're going to want to paint both eyes at the same time. Don't complete one eye and then complete the second eye. You're going to want to do them concurrently. Once I'm satisfied that the eyes are even, it's time to go in with a 005 Prisma marker. And I'm just going to dot in those eyes. If you wanted, you could be done right here, and your eyes would be totally fine, especially in something so small. However, I'm going to build on this further with some more advanced techniques at the end. My second technique is probably the easiest of all 3 of them. It starts out the same as my first technique, where you're going to be applying off-white to the entirety of the eye area. The next thing you're going to do, however, is you're going to take black and you're going to do a single line right down the middle of both eyes. And this is going to serve as your pupil iris. The reason that this is the easiest is because if you mess up, like I did here, you can go ahead and take that off-white and thin down that black line that you just made. Since you haven't yet added the eyeliner, you don't need to worry about staying within those lines. The next thing you're going to do is that same subtractive technique of adding that eyeliner and slowly building that up to the correct eye shape. Again, we're going to go a little bit more advanced later. Technique number 3 is the most advanced and should be done after you've at least started painting the face. I personally don't like working this way because I think that it makes things more difficult than it needs to be. After you've applied your base layer to the face, you're going to take that dark eyeliner color and apply that to the eyes. And you're going to want to go a little bit further out than perfectly within the eyes. Then you're going to take your off-white and you're going to attempt to perfectly paint in the whites of the eyes. This is why this seems harder than is really worth it. because this is the easiest place for you to mess up. But it can be done. After you've added in the whites of the eyes, go ahead and take that marker or paintbrush, whatever you want to do, and add in the black of the pupil or iris. So you want to kick your eyes up a notch. The next thing to do is add a white highlight or add color to the iris. This is very risky because this is the point where you're most likely to mess up. And as you've seen through this video, I'm doing a tutorial on how to paint eyes and you're watching me mess up. Messing up is just part of this. Painting eyes is really difficult. I have painted probably 100 miniatures and I'm still messing up on the eyes. So if you're feeling brave, feel free to continue with these next steps, but if you're not, no worries, I'm sure your model looks great, even without the reflections in their eyes. My main advice for this step is to seal your miniatures before you add highlights or colors. That way, if you mess up, you can quickly wash away your mistake with water and the sealed layers have a better chance of staying intact. I do not do that here, and I had to reapply my marker before I could continue. You want to put the highlight in the upper right-hand corner. Upper left works too, but I always just like upper right. Just be sure that the highlight connects from the white of the eyes into the iris pupil. That's what's going to give it that really glossy appearance. On this miniature, I messed up when I was applying the highlight, and I really just cut the pupil in half without actually just dotting the upper right-hand corner. So I took some black and from the bottom, ever so slightly, added that curve, added that underside of her pupil iris back in. To add color to the eyes, you're going to add a pretty light color of whatever iris color you want. In this miniature, I am doing gold. And I am going to paint that in, attempting to leave a ring of darkness around the eye. And it's going to give it a very glossy appearance while still giving that contrast by leaving the dark ring. I hope that this video was useful for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. If you like what I do here, you can support me by joining me on Patreon to get access to my Discord server, access to behind the scenes photos, videos early, as well as join my growing community, and you can also get personalized advice and critique from me. If Patreon isn't really your thing, you can support me by sharing this video far and wide, liking and subscribing, and commenting as well. I would love to hear from you. If you paint eyes using any of these techniques, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your progress. Otherwise, I hope that you're having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and healthy and paint more miniatures.